Working Artist Project is brought to you by Second Line Arts Collective. Learn how you can support at secondlinearts.org.
We're creating a platform for those who are curious, one that tells the story from the artist's perspective. Moments in time, captured from the innovators who are reshaping dance, music, theater, and the visual arts. This is the Working Artist Project.
Good evening, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today is February 14th, the day of love and compassion and understanding and romance. And I couldn't be happier to share this day with one of my best friends, Mr. Darian Douglas. Darian, how's your Valentine's Day going?
Oh man, it's just beautiful, Greg. I'm happy to be back in New York. I thought I was going to be back in my house, but alas, I am not. So I got my virtual kitty back over here. That's Tots. You know what I'm saying?
Tots?
Me and Tots, yeah. Tots. Tots.
Like tater tots or like?
Yeah, just like tater tots, baby. Yeah, bro, I'm excited to be back here with you, man. Tonight or today, I'm a little sleepy. I haven't had my coffee yet. We got some super important people with us today, man. And Mr. Tom Mayer and Ben Kahn from over at Blind Duet, one of my favorite podcasts, man. And what these guys do is they bring two people who have never made music together and probably don't even know each other. They bring them together, they introduce them and say, create. And so y'all really got to go check this podcast out, Blind Duet. We're going to get them on here to talk a lot about the music industry and why they created this podcast and why it's so special. I think it's special. What you think?
I think it's a great idea, and I can't wait to hear more about it and the process that went into making something like this, especially since a lot of their the content is all made virtually. So, this is all very pertinent to 2022 and how art is created in the day of the internet.
Bro, welcome to the metaverse, man. I know you don't want to live in the metaverse, Greg, but we living in it, baby.
It's the beginning of it. Our grandkids are going to be watching us online. They'll be like, man, there was such a long time ago. Use video cameras. That's ancient.
I know, man. I guess we should also, for the sake of transparency, let our listeners know that Tom does work for Second Line Arts Collective as our
development
coordinator. And so what that is a fancy word for me. Tom brings in all the money for our programming and so we love him. He's I don't want to tell everybody this because somebody's gonna steal him, but he's the greatest to do it. He's one of the greatest to ever do it. So anyway, man, without further ado, let's welcome Tom Mayer and Ben Kahn to the Working Artist Project. What up, y'all?
Hello.
How's it going, guys?
What's up? What's happening?
We are so happy to be here. That was a very kind intro. Thank you. Love you guys. That was really great. And we are so excited to be on the Working Artist Project, one of my favorite podcasts. So this is a great moment for me.
Yeah, I'm glad to know that we have at least 2 listeners to the podcast. So that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
Hey,
well, no, 4, I guess 6 because our parents listen as well. So that's also pretty good.
I was going to say right back at you. But today's an exciting day too because I believe this is the first time we've had 2 guests on at the same time. So we're in for quite an exciting experiment, and we'll see how the conversation goes with 4 people instead of 3. So I'm excited.
It's the second time because we had Brian Richburg, remember?
Not exactly. I do remember.
And what's my man, the trumpet player?
John
were
Michael.
Together.
Right.
John Michael. That's right. So it's our second time. So we know we doing. We professionals, man.
That's true. Yeah, we got this under control. It's fine. Yeah.
but dig this, y'all. I do I know the premise of the podcast. I do want to know what inspired y'all to get this thing going.
Well, that's a really great question. And what's funny, Darian, is all 3 of you already know the answer. If you remember back in 2020, I cold emailed you about doing some research. I was finishing up my grad program at the University of London, and I had just gotten permission to submit a dissertation in an alternative format. I was preparing a podcast dissertation about the music industry in New Orleans. It kind of touched on a lot of different things. It was like about COVID and race and education and post Katrina New Orleans. And you, Darian, were my first interview, and it went horribly. I was so bad at it. You were great. You were fantastic, and you answered all the questions beautifully and eloquently and everything. But I was horrible at asking questions. I didn't know what I was doing yet. And then I also got in touch with Greg, and we had an interview. Ben is weirdly kind of featured throughout that podcast series. He kind of is like the anchor of Ben's story of leaving New Orleans, wanting to make music in LA because New Orleans kind of wasn't supporting him, which I hope we can all touch on later in this interview, because I think it's really important. It's something that we all are familiar with. But that is how I got involved with podcasting, and I kind of drew Ben in through that podcast. We wanted to make something together. And so I'm very sorry, Darian, that your interview, it never made the final cut of that podcast, because I was so, I was so bad at it. Well, I have that interview somewhere, and I'm going to go revisit it at some point. But Greg and Ben are in the final cut of that.
Hey man, I like how Tom takes responsibility for mine. I'm sure it was definitely me.
No, it really it wasn't, because I remember asking you, I was like trying to introduce you to all of these theories that I had been reading up on and researching, all of these like really nuanced theories about capitalism and urban development. And I was like, okay, Darian, what do you think of this? And you're like, yeah, that seems pretty cool. I was like, oh no, wait, but you have to understand this part of it. It's actually terrible. And you're like, oh, okay, yeah, I guess that's terrible. And I just felt so bad because I stunk it up on that interview, but I'll go find it. I'll send it to you, and we can watch it together and cringe at how I formatted it. But that's kind of how it got started. Ben and I were both obsessed with music and supporting musicians, and through my research, we spent some time podcasting together and creating that podcast. It really was collaborative, even though it was an assignment for me. Ben, what do you remember about doing that?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think to be fair, this is not our first attempt at a podcast. That we have some failed ideas that we started first. We really wanted to make something that we felt like was informative at first. I think that was like our first venture, was like trying to figure out. We had like an idea about talking to musicians that were in different scenes. So like they were in different places in the world, and like interviewing a bunch of musicians that lived there and kind of trying to figure out what the scene was like there and how that was similar to scenes that we were both familiar with. I mean, grew up in New Orleans. I went to college in New York. Now I live in LA. So I feel like I have a pretty good understanding of like the three of the big music scenes in the US. But I was interested in learning about more small town music scenes and learning about other countries and what it's like over there, and how that maybe relates to what I'm used to. And I think from that kind of came this idea of like, wait a second, what we really want is actually to connect people from different music scenes. Like that was the idea that podcast was, is like, how can we connect people from different parts of the world, so you don't have to come to LA or you don't have to come to New York. I think like now with all this digital stuff, I mean, none of us are in the same room. We're making podcasts, we're talking. We were like, maybe you can create music that way too. And maybe that the scene, obviously live is different, but the scene for creating is, online at this point. We can make art virtually apart. So that's kind of how the podcast came about. It was thinking about how to connect people from different places and find out that as musicians, we're all kind of dealing with the same stuff. And so like, why not just work together and make something?
That's such an interesting point too, that I think is a great thing. Is again, like from being a musician from New Orleans, having lived in New York, LA, there's all these different micro scenes that exist. But now in 20, I guess maybe the last 5 years or so, you have a whole new scene that's come out of nowhere, and that's the internet content creator scene. You got like the cats like Chad Leftwich Brown. You got your, for me, I'm like deep into the clarinet rabbit hole on Instagram, and you got drum stuff, you got guitar stuff, and so those cats, it's been interesting to watch them grow audiences and also make a living on that scene via Instagram, collaborate with other artists and things like that, which is really fascinating. And it's cool again to transcend a specific location with the advent of the internet. So you guys are, so can you talk us through a little bit about how the podcast works, and maybe like talk about some of the artists and collaborations you all have had?
Absolutely. Ben, kick it off.
Yeah, I was gonna say we have like our soundbite elevator pitch version of it, which is like 2 musicians, 2 weeks, 2 minutes of music. That's our short thing, which basically means we take 2 musicians, and I think I want to also say that I consider producers and DJs and even guys that are mostly audio engineers, I consider them in that field as well. So we don't just limit it to instrumentalists. Obviously, we have vocalists as well and all that. But yeah, so we have 2 people, two artists, and we give them we do an initial interview, get to know them, they get to know each other. They haven't met before. That's the other thing. We make sure that it's 2 people that haven't met before. And then we give them 2 weeks to create something virtually. We ask for about 2 minutes of music. Obviously, they can do more. And then we interview them after they've finished their collaborative process and talk about go really deep into what they created. And we even splice in little pieces of audio. We try to get the stems from them as well, so that we can hear and we can focus in as we're talking about the drum beat, or as we're talking about the keyboard part or whatever. We can have the audience zoom in on that and listen to that soloed with us.
Yeah, I don't know if y'all are fans of Song Exploder, of that podcast, where artists will come on and they're able to isolate like here's the guitar part from this song. And then sort of share the story of creating that guitar part, or a vocal line or a bass line or whatever. We're heavily influenced is a modest way, I think, or a polite way of saying plagiarizers of Song Exploder a little bit, in that that concept it's so engaging and it's so informative and instructive. So we want to be able to isolate some parts from each song that comes out of Blind Duet, and then share that with listeners, and then have the artist explain, here's exactly what went into that. And of course, each episode wraps up by we play the whole song that our artist came up with.
Bro, I'm curious how you guys think that this new technology is going to aid in people being able to stay in their hometowns. People not like, how is this going to kind of elevate people to circumvent like the lack of industry that is in their cities?
I think that's really where we started this whole idea from. Excuse me. And you guys have experienced the New Orleans music scene, and how there's so much good music and there's so many good musicians, but unfortunately there's not that industry support that we need a lot of the time. And so I think that was kind of one of the things we were thinking about, is like, how can we get people from smaller scenes to connect with people? Excuse me. It's also kind of early in LA, y'all. I'm sorry.
Yeah, everyone, he's up at 9 o'clock in the morning. That's quite an accomplishment for a musician, I have to
What
say.
a soldier.
And I can say that because I know what it's like.
But yeah, so what I was saying was just like trying to connect people from smaller music scenes with bigger music scenes, and letting them, create something from home. I think you had asked about, you can be from anywhere now if you have a camera or a phone even, and an instrument, and share what you have with such a bigger community. And I think that's really special.
I have a lot of strong thoughts on this, because I think it is such a double-edged sword. The internet being this democratizing force for the music industry, but now I think sort of in this idealistic sense, we're not relying on gatekeepers. Everyone can have their music on SoundCloud. Everyone can have a YouTube channel, and anyone can, like, quote unquote, get discovered, or can be an artist, be a creator, and have their music heard and find their audience. At the same time, I think we're simply swapping out gatekeepers a little bit. It used to be whoever, Universal and BMI. It was like record labels that played Kingmaker for musicians. And now we've kind of recreated the same system, just with new Kingmakers. Now it's Spotify and it's YouTube. We're still relying on, these companies aren't just platforms that are passive and artists are filling them. They are taking an active role in deciding who's the next big thing. And yeah, there certainly are exceptions that prove the rule, but it's still, the 0.01% of artists on SoundCloud are striking it rich and making it big and creating this idealized career out of their content, out of their music being posted on SoundCloud or Spotify or whatever. So I grapple with that a lot. I think about what is our role with Blind Duet, and all of our roles as folks who are invested in supporting musicians and creating platforms for musicians. Ben and I, we still have a few hurdles to solve of, like, to be on Blind Duet, you can be anywhere, but you have to have a certain amount of equipment, right? Unfortunately, we can't just have you recording into your computer speaker and sending that MP3 to your collaborator. We are hoping to have a certain level of recording quality to match what your partner is going to be bringing to the table. So we're still figuring that out, and how is that affecting access for musicians and being able to jump on Blind Duet. Those are all the things that are kind of swirling around in my head.
So, Ben mentioned the word industry, and I guess we're talking about, again, the transition of the industry, like kind of going from a local scene to maybe the internet. The place we're at now, whatever it's called. But when I hear like a lack of infrastructure in regards to the industry, I think of the lack of financial opportunities for musicians. Like, again, like here in New Orleans, and I've been really down on this lately, and I feel like maybe another time I can go off my soapbox about what I think is wrong with the scene here. But long story short, the only real opportunities for musicians here in New Orleans are to play $100, $200, $300 gigs, and you make enough money to make it to the gig the next night, and that's it. And whenever any type of industry type related project comes to town, it's usually someone from LA, Nashville, New York, who gets the contract, and they subcontract these, a $300 recording session to a New Orleans musician that's going to get no residual income. And so that's the industry summed up here in these smaller scenes. But and I see that thing happening also on the internet. Like, just because we have access to things like Spotify and SoundCloud and Facebook and Instagram, I feel like a lot of the musicians too, like, we give off the facade of doing really well. We have 12,000 followers, we got 30,000 followers, but we're still broke. We're still fighting for that access to industry, because now all of a sudden we're contributing all of our works, and we're giving you have millions of people giving pennies to Spotify. You have millions of people giving pennies to SoundCloud, and they're the ones getting rich. So I was wondering, like, again, like speaking on the industry and speaking on, again, like taking the power back for as artists, like what are the hurdles that artists have, again, in the internet community, in taking back the industry?
Man, can I just say, can we cut that out? Like, can we stop the facade a little bit? I think, like, that's been so frustrating with me, or I've been so frustrated with that as a musician. I think it's an internal conflict as well. It's musicians judging other musicians for doing things or putting them in a position where it's like, oh, he's a teacher, he's not a musician anymore, or she is, she works part-time at a coffee shop, so like she can't do all the gigs now. And it's like, that is really frustrating. I think it's something that, one of the reasons why I wanted to do this podcast, and one of the things that I'm trying to do is connecting more people so that they can realize that there's other people outside of just or like sharing context, I guess is really what I'm trying to say. Like, I want to share more information with other musicians. I feel like I've been fortunate enough to play a lot of really cool gigs, do a lot of cool recording sessions. And the only reasons that I've been able to do that is because I've known people, but I still see that like it's the same people kind of doing the same stuff. And I feel like we should just share more. There is enough gigs, like there is enough money in gigs to go around, in my opinion, as far as like when you get outside of that small scene, when things start paying better as well, like when you actually start realizing how you can make money from music besides just playing the gig. You can make money from sync opportunities. You can make money from publishing. You can make money from writing for other people. And I mean, even if you take some of these big songs and people complain about there being like 8 writers on there, it's just so everybody gets paid, like that's kind of how I'm thinking about it. Like I'm really someone who believes in sharing resources, and I believe in not trying to box in my fellow musicians or my fellow artists. Like, I really want everybody to win. I know that sounds really corny to a certain extent, but like, I don't really like, if we're friends, like if you're someone that I think is a good person and respects, there's like a good musician, good artist, good person, like I'm willing to share everything that I have resource wise. And I do wish that more people were on that train.
Yep. To piggyback there on what Ben said. First of all, I agree with you, Ben, that I think everyone is partially creating their social media persona a little bit and projecting how they want to be perceived. This is like, we all know this. It's 2022. We've all lived on social media for the better part of 20 years now. So like, I think we all sort of know the drill. But it's 20 years in, there's still this trend of like crafting your life, crafting your little persona that lives out there on the internet. That's maybe a slice of you, but it's not this like authentic representation of who you are and what you do. And I think
isn't that like what the music industry is though? I mean, like, as I was driving here, I was listening to the radio, and everyone, the talk radio here in New Orleans, they were bitching and complaining about the Super Bowl halftime, and the guy was complaining about thug culture being perpetuated into the mainstream. But I know, just think of like Dr. Dre. The dude is a millionaire and lives in probably the nicest house possible, and he's like up there rapping about growing up in Compton and living this like hard life. So I mean, isn't that like the same thing you're talking about?
Well, I'm gonna say this about that topic. I think when Dr. Dre wrote that song, it was true. I mean, you got to remember that song is 20 some years old, man. That music that he was talking about, he's a billionaire today, but when he was writing that music, he wasn't necessarily, he was poor, living in Compton in the hood. So it was a direct representation of his life in that moment. I don't want to get into, because we're not here for that, this people talking about thug. Like, I didn't see no thugs on stage. I saw a bunch of old dudes. Like J. Cole is not a thug. He was the youngest cat on there. Like, Anderson .Paak is not a thug. Is you know what I'm saying? Like, this is not like 1990, bro. Like nobody's listening to gangster rap anymore. Like, that's just not even what the hip hop is. And so whoever was saying that is just extremely out of touch with popular music currently.
But I guess my point though is just, again, like to me, like the a whole idea of celebrity is like a curtailed, like you get to see the procured version of like what the industry
Yeah,
wants you to see, and you don't actually get to see the day to day of what like an artist is dealing with, you know?
Well,
that's true.
let me take this into left field for 1 second, or like a quick sidebar, because this is one of my favorite questions to ask on Blind Duet, which is, do you want to be famous? What is your relationship with celebrity? So, Greg G, Darian Douglas, do you want to be famous?
Man, you know, Tom, I've never wanted to be famous, man. It's never interested me ever. I think for me, my one goal for a musician was I was like, okay, if I can make a good living being a musician and I can send and I can have a family and buy a house and you know what I mean? Like that's true success for me. I don't want to put like a number on like, you know, I would love to make billions of dollars playing like producing art, you know, but I don't want to be famous. That seems like a burden that no man actually wants. Like Prince, Michael Jackson, they all killed themselves because of this, you know. Personally, for me, I don't want it.
Yeah, I mean, as far as now I'm being interviewed on my podcast. This is terrifying. Man, I've always seen fame as I mean, again, like I feel like I come from the same perspective as Darian. You know, like I definitely I'm a clarinet player. I've never dreamed of being, you know, famous. Like but I see how having a platform does help your career. You know, and I don't think for me, my idea has always been I want to be a great musician, and part of the game is that you have to create art for people, and you have to have some type of interaction with people. So, but from that perspective, like I don't know about being famous, but I do feel the need to have an audience for what I do, because I think that creates I want to be playing clarinet when I'm 60. And if I don't have an audience, I think that would make that goal a little more challenging. And also I make my living from playing clarinet and saxophone. So, you know, I feel like those two things go hand in hand. Am I looking to be famous? No, not really. But I just want to be respected in my field and continue to develop my craft and play.
Yeah, I think there's this guy that I read a lot of his stuff named Seth Godin. And you know about Seth Godin? About like the whole tribes concept, huh? Where it's like
Seth Godin, I have like Seth Godin quotes all over my wall. I've like read all his books. He is my favorite.
that's great. Yeah, yeah, me too, man. I haven't read all of his books, but I've read I follow his like get his like daily posts, and I read Lynchpin is the one that I read.
Dude, that's the book.
And it was like it really changed my whole perspective on being an artist, even though it wasn't it was I mean it was touched on art, but there was other stuff they talked about too. But the idea of art being a gift is in the sense of like it's not art unless it's a gift, unless you share it. And I think
I think it was a gift that creates change in someone else. That was like the full definition.
exactly. And it's just like when I think about it as that, I knew that that's what it was, that's why I wanted to release art my whole life, but I never had been able to word it just like that. And I think for me, like when I figured that out, my whole mindset changed of like, now I want to release more stuff. I was less scared to release things. And I think like what you were saying about having an audience as well, the whole tribes concept of like, there's a group of people that want what you have to offer. They want the gift that you can give them of your art. And I think like, you don't have to be famous for that. And the one good thing that social media and YouTube and all that stuff has shown us is that people have that audience and they can make a living and be, you know, I guess some version of famous, but more just like well-known than actually famous, because they're not performing at the Super Bowl. You know, they're not, they can still go to a coffee shop with their camera and vlog, and people might recognize them, but it's not, you know, as many people as Kendrick Lamar or Beyonce or Jay-Z or the president or something like that. You know what I mean? It's not like on that level, but they're making a living. They have families, they have houses, they have everything they need. And I think that that's really, really special. And it's something that I hope, or I'm seeing it get a little dark, and I'm hoping that it doesn't get too bad, in the sense of like, I think the audience needs to, it would be nice if the audience also recognized that that's a gift. Like when someone makes a video and you're like inspired to create something, or somebody releases, even just an Instagram post that changes your mindset, or like reading this book, the Seth Godin book, like that was such a beautiful gift that I was able to receive. And I think like when I now absorb other art or other content from people, I respect it more, because I know like how much that takes out of you to actually release something. I'm not like, give me more. Like, I feel like people are like more content all the time. And I'm just like, no, there's like 20 people you can get a little bit of content from and still be satisfied. And it's like, I really appreciate being able to receive that and being able to experience that and being able to feel better about myself or about my day because I watched that video, listened to that song, or heard that quote, read that book, whatever.
Yeah, as Tom, you were mentioning that your first episode of the podcast didn't make it on air. I literally thought to myself too, one of the things that Seth preaches a bunch about, and he's like, our job as artists is not, or our job is not finished until our product is shipped. And what he means by that is like, until the CD is released, until the podcast hits live or whatever it is, like you haven't actually completed your artwork. And I think that's like, again, like one of the most challenging things for all of us artists is, again, to create something and then to let it out into the world and let the world decide the merit of whatever it is we're creating. Because for all of us, it's like, I listen to the podcast, Darian and I's podcast, and I'm like, man, I sound so stupid saying this, and like, why do I do that? And and if I had my way, I wouldn't release any of it because I sound like an idiot. But I don't have a choice because we're live. So, but again, like, as an artist, like shipping the work is one of the biggest challenges. Also, he speaks a lot about creating. I love this one too. It's like, it's not about creating work for millions of people. It's about creating something of value for one person. And then once you've created something of value for one person, you can focus on 2 and then 4 and then 8 and 16. And that whole process gives you the skills and experience necessary to deal with larger numbers as your work develops and becomes more refined and applicable to greater groups of people. So yeah, I appreciate you shouting out Seth Godin, because his books and perspectives have really opened up my mind and my feelings towards creating art.
Yeah, and that gets into that like 1,000 true fans concept as well. I forget. I think Ferriss, is that the guy who did that?
Tim Ferriss?
Yeah, isn't he the 1,000 true fans guy? Like, it's like that concept, I think, really goes hand in hand of like, if you just have, I think, like thinking about manageable numbers of who you can reach, and then realizing that from those manageable numbers, you can get a huge following, or you can reach more people. And I think that seems more, when I think about that, and I think about like what Seth talks about, it makes it a little bit easier to think about releasing stuff. And I was going to say too, my favorite part about our podcast is that it's something that I actually get to see start to finish release. We do it once a month, but it's like, before that, I spent so much time working on projects. Like, I mean, I'm sure all of us have hundreds, if not thousands of songs or beats or ideas like on a hard drive that we've never released, that's never going to come out. And so I think having something that I am forcing myself to finish every month, just really, I love it. I just love that I'm getting to share something, even if, like you said, 20 people, 6 people listen to it, 100 people. I just have so much faith, I think, at this point, that persistence in releasing something and practicing that concept of making art start to finish is going to lead to more people listening to it, or more people knowing about it, or more people just, I hope, just feeling better, having a better day because they listen to something that we made, you know?
Yeah.
I feel like even Instagram, for me, that's the way I look at Instagram. Every time I post a video of me playing, that's an exercise of like, this is just a little snippet that I have to like get over my self-doubt and put it out there. And it's just an exercise in doing that. And I think that's, again, like one of the greatest practices an artist can go through in their career.
I think too. Oh, sorry, Tom. I keep cutting you off. My bad.
Oh, you're good. I have found that I really care a lot about each episode that we make, which has been really nice for me. I don't. Ben and I used to play a lot of music together back in high school and a little bit in college and a little bit after college, which was wonderful. Some of my favorite memories for sure. And since then, I've been on like a little bit of a downswing on playing music. Haven't picked up the drumsticks in a minute. And so I have been looking for other creative outputs. And this was a reminder that, man, I really care a lot about making sure that whatever I create in whatever form, I'm a little bit of a perfectionist, I think, in a healthy way. Just in that I don't think a lot of people can say this, but I really enjoy editing. I really enjoy editing our podcast. I edit for content, and then I pass it to Ben, who edits for, like, he's like the audio engineer side of stuff. And so I'm in there, like all the mouth clicks and all the breaths and stuff. I'm in there like editing all of those out. I need it to be a perfectly little crafted masterpiece before I send it to Ben. And of course, it's not like I'm not super OCD about it or anything, but that is how now a weird expression of my creativity is almost turning these long interviews that we do. And just for context, Blind Duet is pretty heavily edited. We do 2 1-hour interviews plus the song plus a little intro from me and Ben, and we crunch that all into usually 30 or 35 minutes. And so being able to craft that narrative and find the through lines from interview 1 to interview 2 and make sure those get connected in the final edit, that's the kind of stuff that I've come to really enjoy, which has been great.
Yeah, man, that's beautiful. You guys have I'm just sitting here listening to you guys, and I don't have that thing that you all three, or at least Greg and Ben, have about putting stuff. I have the opposite end of that, where I'm just like, all right, create, put out. I don't give a shit what it is. I just don't even think about it again. I just move on with my life and start and go to the next thing, which is also detrimental because sometimes it really sucks. Or sometimes you miss things. I'm a doer. I don't think about if it's gonna suck or not. I just don't even it just doesn't even register to me with anything I do. I'm just like, oh, sounds good, let's do it. You know what I mean? So it's interesting to hear you guys talk about that, the other process where you do have some fear or some anxiety associated with creation, or like Tom said, it's a perfectionist,
I know that Ben and I are fans of the comedian Bo Burnham. I don't know if y'all check out his stuff. He's kind of that's as a creator, as someone in like his creative process, he's someone I really look up to, where he just disappears for 2 years. He doesn't do anything for 2 years. And then suddenly he drops this new special and it makes huge waves. His last one, Inside, man, I thought it was like one of the most important pieces of art. That is now like a new touchstone for me personally. And I think a lot of people found it hugely relatable and very clever. And he's disappeared again. And now he's off. I don't know what he's doing. And that's kind of the point. No one knows what he's doing. He's not live tweeting his breakfast or like giving little snippets, little behind the scenes, anything. He just disappears and is off making art, I assume.
Tom, the crazy thing about that is like his concept works, but also the Cardi B concept works, where you let people all the way into your life super deep, where they feel like they really know you. You know what I mean? Like that's if you think about Cardi B, she's a great thought experiment because she was literally some girl in the Bronx who was a stripper. And she created a following, like Greg said, she got an audience, so it's 1,000 people. And then she just grew it to millions. Like she's not that talented. She's like, we can name 1,000 rappers who are better than Cardi B, or people who are more interesting. But the thing that everybody was afraid to do was to be themselves and let people see everything. She did that, and she leveraged that versus Bo Burnham, who just like, I see you on the next creative pursuit, see you in 5 years. And it's interesting to think about because it both works really well.
It just depends on your audience. I think it's like, if your audience is people who want that 30-second video content every day, or they want that, what are you eating for breakfast? What do you care? I actually, there's this whole sub thing that I like, actually. It's like a everyday carry. I don't know if you guys watch those videos on YouTube, but it's like what people carry in their pockets all day. And they just like show you, like, I got a pocket knife. I've got, this new key fob thing. And I've got like, these like rings and stuff, just stuff. I think that's kind of cool sometimes, but I think some people are into that. And then you got the other side, like we're talking about, where maybe your audience has a little more patience for your art to come out. But something I actually I was going to talk to you about, Greg, that I think, going back to talking about releasing things, I feel like you of all people have a bit of a responsibility, because you were like taught by somebody. I'm specifically talking about Alvin Baptiste, who is like, your mentor, and somebody that I had a little bit of contact with when I was at NOCA as well. I feel like when we get to experience people that have so much to teach and so much to share with the world, and they didn't have social media, like, he was someone who just was able to touch so many people on a personal level by being a teacher and being just someone that really shaped and molded a lot of young musicians, and like, he had to do that by actually seeing people in person, and just meeting. And I think, like, to be able to share some of that information and some of that perspective on life and music creation is like, I love when I get so excited when I see you post videos and it'll be like one of his tunes or something like that, or you'll have like a quote from him underneath your video or something like that. To me is really special, and something that we can continue to do, sharing information from people that didn't get to share it with as many people or something like that. I think that's something that I really value with this new media that we have. And I'm actually wearing a special shirt today too. I was going to share it. It's the Jazz Camp shirt from 2005.
I saw that, yeah.
So
that's Katrina year.
That's the Katrina year. I found it at my parents' house, like when they're moving. So I was like going through some stuff, and I found this shirt, and it was huge on me when I was a little kid, and like now it's a little tight. So, but that's where I first actually met Greg. That's where I first met Greg, and where I first met Mr. Bat and all that stuff. So just like, I don't know. I think it's just so important to share. That's me. That's my whole thing. I'm just all about sharing at this point, because I feel like I get frustrated with people just hoarding knowledge, hoarding opportunity. I think I'm much more interested in sharing.
I have so many thoughts coming to my mind as you were saying everything. So I hope I can get everything out. But like back to the Cardi B and Bo Burnham thing. I think like a really important concept that I've like tried to embrace in my life is just win-win. And whenever I think of a situation, I always try to think of it as like, how can I win and how can this other person win? And every opportunity I try to create, I always go at it from a win-win perspective. Is again, like, how am I going to benefit from this? How am I going to create value for someone else? And I think that's the cool thing too about these tribes and the access that the internet provides, is that you can do it your way and be tremendously successful. Like Bo Burnham does it his way, Cardi B does it her way, and just because one is successful doesn't delegitimize the other one. And I think that's a hard thing that I've had to overcome in my jazz musician mind, of like incorporating technical ability as a standard for art, because technical ability has no bearing on art, in my opinion. It does have a bearing on, like, maybe what I feel is important, because that's just the way I live my life. But just because some dude or whoever, anyone, just goes and creates something, and if it creates a change in someone else and they love it and goes viral and he makes $3 billion off of it, I guess that's art. And I just have to realize that it's okay. Everyone can do their thing and be successful. And again, just because he does it that way doesn't mean I can't do it my way. But also back to Mr. Bat. Yo, man, I love Mr. Baptiste, and my whole origin of life and where I'm at today, like, really began, in my opinion, with meeting Mr. Baptiste and meeting him at a young age. I always told myself that, like, I remember having conversations with myself saying, like, I don't know why I met this man right now in my life, but I know it's really important. And I always, like, really wanted to treasure those moments with him. And, I really feel like for me, again, like, a lot of times I see my life as a before moving to New Orleans and after moving to New Orleans, but maybe it's more like before meeting Bat, after Bat. But yeah, again, that's the thing, is just that we have so much to share with the world. And, again, I just, my idea has always been, Mr. Bat was a man of integrity. He was a man that was, like, playful. He had a lot of fun. He never, like, judged people. He really tried to, I think there was a quote I read somewhere, and he's like, I love teaching because there's nothing like seeing the light shine in someone's eye, or something like that, or seeing the light turn on in someone's eye. And I just, yeah, man, I truly appreciate the gift that he gave me, and hope that, and tying this back into celebrity and creating a facade or whatever, like, just again, like, you can be famous and still be an intellectual. You can still be a great practicer and be a role model for people. Like, it doesn't always have to be the lowest common denominator to get eyes, to get, affirmations, or, some type of validation. So, I appreciate Mr. Bat for opening up that in my mind and showing me that was possible. And I hope, and I always intend to pass on what he gave me, because I truly believe, like, he literally gave me a gift, or opened up a gift that was in my heart that I didn't know. And I hope that by whatever I do, can create that same change in other people, or inspire other people to go through that process themselves.
I'm gonna just second that. Yeah, you're right. Go ahead, Tom.
Beautiful. I was just going to say that was beautiful, Greg.
Y'all, we coming to an end. We're getting close here to time, and it goes so fast when it's 4 people. We might need to Joe Rogan and do 5-hour interviews when But before we go,
I don't think it's good advice to do anything Joe Rogan these days.
Oh, guys, see that? Yeah, well, that's a whole nother. We could add a whole episode just talking about what we think of Joe Rogan's decisions, but that's neither here nor there. But before we go, man, I do want to give you guys an opportunity to tell people where to connect with you online, on your social webs, what your social security number is, and all the stuff that you're selling.
All right, so you can follow the podcast at Blind Duet Pod on Instagram. We're also on all of your favorite, I always say, wherever you like to podcast. So wherever you get your podcasting information from, we're on all those places. We even recently started releasing our podcast on YouTube as well. So if that's your platform of choice, we just have the audio up right now, but we're working on adding some more video content. We got some new things in the works that we're working out this year. But yeah, we're on Spotify, all that stuff, Apple Music, Apple Podcasts, I guess, all that. Also, if you're interested in being on the podcast, that's the other thing. So if you're a musician and you want to get paired on a blind duet with somebody, you can email us blindduetpod@gmail.com. Just send us an email or hit us up on Instagram too. You can DM us, whatever. We're always looking for more people. And then I guess my personal Instagram is Benjamin Beignet at Benjamin Beignet on Instagram. If you want to see some of the content that I release, you know, if you're interested.
Don't
And
forget about Chef Beignet.
oh yeah, I also was working. That's something else, but that's about like, again, just trying to figure out the best way to share things I'm interested in with other people. But yeah, sometimes I make food too. But yeah, Tom, what about you?
Well, nothing. I don't have an Instagram. If you want to get in touch with me, you can just get in touch with the podcast at Blind Duet Pod. I do want to say that our most recent episode is non-traditional. Usually it's featuring two guest musicians and the music they make together. This past one, we're trying to fill out the feed a little bit, and Ben and I really wanted to try something new. So we have sort of a sub podcast. I don't know, how would you describe it?
I was calling it like a new series. We have like a new series we're working on.
Yeah, called Great Moments in Duet History, and anything from the history of recorded music is in play, and we are featuring. It could be a song, an album, a live performance, anything like that that is a duet or some kind of collaboration. And what's really fun, the format is one of us has it in mind and describes it to the other without sharing what the duet is, without the other co-host knowing what is being brought to the table. So the first episode is really fun. All I'll say is it's from 2012. And there's sort of this fun reveal halfway through the episode when Ben and the rest of our audience finds out what's really going on. I had a lot of fun recording that one.
That's beautiful, y'all. I was just sitting here thinking, man, I want to make sure that our listeners get the importance of this conversation, and it's just that the power of the internet is currently bringing musicians and artists together in a way that has never happened before and has broken down so many barriers. But at the same time, we're not really making more money from it. And so that's where something's got to change. And we didn't even get to NFTs and blockchain technology. And I think that maybe, in a different interview, we talk about that in the opportunities that's going to allow musicians and artists of all kinds to recoup the money that is now being distributed to people like Spotify, so they can pay Joe Rogan $100 million and pay us 0.0000003% of a penny or whatever the fuck we make for our download. So I just want to say fuck Spotify, but thank y'all for coming on the show. I gotta say one reckless thing every episode, Greg.
I want to add one more thing to that too. With the power of the internet too, is like, again, like we are all, as content creators, we are the ones who decide the climate and culture of the internet. So let's use the internet as an opportunity to empower ourselves as individuals, to empower ourselves through a community, to create like positive content that uplifts people, as opposed to using this platform to create division and spread hate and all this kind of bullshit happening in the world too. And also we got to make some money. Like, God, Spotify, come on, man. I keep coming back to this thing, y'all. If you made a $10,000 CD and put it on Spotify, you would need to make like 14 million streams to have $33,000 of royalty money, which is the same amount of money you could have made had you invested $10,000 in Spotify stock at the low and sold at the high. So, again, I don't know what the point of that is, but information can hopefully liberate you and inform your decisions. But yeah, we gotta take the power back of the internet, man, because these blood-sucking motherfuckers are trying to get us.
And on that note, y'all, thank y'all. My name is Darian Douglas.
Greg Reggie. See, I'm trying to be reckless like you now.
Oh, I see. I like that. All right. This is the Working Artists Project, and we'll catch y'all.